For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon Derehove. I'm with Gareth Newham at the Institute for Security Studies to discuss the latest crime statistics in South Africa. The total number of serious crimes in South Africa was reduced by 2.4% in 2010-11, with 2.07 million crimes committed in the period compared with 2.1 million in 2009-10. The number still seems alarmingly high. Please elaborate.
Yes, it is very high. I think there's no doubt we still have a crime problem and we have a high crime rate. The crime stats are really there to give us an indication of the trends. So it helps us to know whether things are getting worse or better. And remember, different categories of crime indicate different kinds of issues. So a lot of the interpersonal violent crime, your murder rates, assault, rape, really are telling us something different to the kinds of crimes that we might be looking at in terms of house robberies, cash and transit heists, which are more organized, deliberate, intentional crimes. A lot of our interpersonal violent crime, which makes up almost a third of our total amount of crime, are between people who know each other with very similar backgrounds and profiles. They're really driven by a range of socio-economic factors and issues at quite a local level. And so around 60 to 80% of murders, for instance, in South Africa occur between people who know each other. They're not stranger murders. And you know, and it's largely amongst males. For every one woman that's killed or murdered in South Africa, 8 males are murdered. So, and it's not distributed evenly across all communities. There's really a handful of communities that record a bulk of our murders and a lot of our interpersonal violence. So that's what really pushes up our crime stats and make us an internationally high crime or high violence society. We do have a lot of other kinds of violent crimes, such as your robberies, but it's difficult to know where we compete, because those crimes are often recorded in different ways in different countries. We do know, however, for theft, certainly housebreaking, burglaries, our rates are not much different to the rates you'll find in the UK and some of the Western countries. What really marks us is our violent crime.
Categories of crime that increase if police are doing their job include drug-related crimes, possession of illegal firearms, and driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs. Did these crimes increase, and would an increase here be seen as positive or negative?
Yeah, those crimes often cause confusion when the crime stats get released. So people will say number of drug cases have gone up, or drug-related offence cases have gone up, and think that means that there's more drugs. Or they'll see drunk and driving cases going up, and they'll think that means there's more drinking and driving, or driving under the influence, which is not actually the case. The police themselves head these crimes, or call them crimes dependent on police action. So people don't report other people for drunk and driving. And usually when police make arrests for drugs, it's not because of reports that they're receiving. People don't go to a police station, report that somebody's got drugs in them, the police go and arrest them, they've got drugs in them. That almost never happens. A vast bulk of these cases, or virtually all of them, occur when police are doing special operations. They're doing search and seizure operations, they're out on patrol, they see people driving recklessly, or they see a drug dealer. Crackdown operations that often happen in places like Hillbrow or Central Johannesburg. And that's when these cases get generated. So each one of those cases that you see in the crime stats is when the police arrest somebody and they open a case against that person. It gets recorded as a crime. So the police usually celebrate when that goes up, or not celebrate, but they see that they see this as an indicator of more police work. So those 3 crime statistics go up when there are more roadblocks and more police operations, and go down when there are fewer police roadblocks and operations. They're not an indicator of the actual proportion of the crime. It does get confusing, and a lot of the media report on this as if it's an increase. These crimes did go up. They have been going up for a while, or the statistics on these cases have been going up, and really it's because of the dramatic increase in the number of police we have in South Africa. So if you consider that since 2002, 2003, we've increased the size of the police service by almost 70,000 people who are now on the streets of South Africa every day, when they weren't there 7 or 8 years ago. They're going to pick up a lot more of these cases, and that's what's driving these increases.
The central message from the crime stats is that although the overall crime threat against business in South Africa is still high, there seems to be a gradual improvement and even visible reductions in most crime types that affect business. What is your opinion on this?
Well, our opinion is determined by the statistics, and not only the official crime statistics. We also look at other statistics and data kept by business associations, such as the South African Bank Risk Information Centre or the Consumer Goods Council, to name just 2. They all keep their own statistics on the crime affecting their members. And so what we do is, when we see the official crime stats, we then also look at those other figures and say, have they shown similar trends? And all the cases that we've looked at, whether it's robberies against business owners or it's burglaries against business owners, truck hijacking, have all gone down. And this is both recorded in the police crime statistics, and in fact bigger decreases are being recorded by SABRIC and by the Consumer Goods Council. What we're seeing is a shift in crime. So it's moving really away, crime that affect business is moving away from big business and organized business. So we've seen a big reduction in the robberies of casinos, robberies of petrol forecourts, for instance, petrol stations, retail robberies and retail burglaries going down, shoplifting is going down. And amongst the bigger organized business, but when it comes to smaller business, that's where we see a different picture. There might even be increases there because there's no association that looks after only small and medium businesses. We don't know, but the reductions have been much larger in the big business associations that are recorded by the police stats, which suggests that these crimes are shifting to what are seen as soft targets: spaza shops, hair salons, small businesses that are operating that don't have the same kind of security measures in place and don't have independent monitoring going on.
What effect does cable theft have on business in South Africa, and how is this crime reported in the stats?
This crime is reported as theft, but it's not kept as a separate category. Organizations like Transnet and others who run the railways will keep figures on these crimes when it affects them. But obviously cable theft they're after the copper. These syndicates are usually syndicates now, it's quite organized. And it can affect electricity, which then often affects trains, and that's how it affects businesses. So for Transnet, they lose millions of rands. They pay fines because if they can't get coal to certain places or they can't get goods to the ports, they pay fines each day that the trains are not running, that they can't deliver. So not only does it cost them the amount of money that they would need to replace the cabling and make sure that their trains are running, they pay the fine. So that fine obviously then later gets passed back on to the consumer with higher rates. So cable theft actually really is a serious crime in South Africa. It's costing our economy many millions of rands. I think it's been likened to economic sabotage because of its impact. And I think we will see government starting to move in the near future towards tougher sentencing legislation and probably developing more specialist capacity to actually deal with this kind of crime, because I think it's costing us way too much indirectly and indirect costs.
There is a report out that states that people who are immigrating from South Africa are driven more by the political uncertainty than by crime. Is this a sign that we are winning the battle against crime?
That is a Grant Thornton International Business Report study, which happens every year, and it's a very useful, another example of an independent source of information. They don't really measure why people are immigrating. They just ask what would be the reasons for you to immigrate. And I think for the first time we've seen now in the most recent 2011 report, which was released in July, quite recently, that more people are saying that they would be willing to or consider immigrating because of political uncertainty than they would because of crime. In fact, it went up from about 42% to 46%, the numbers of people who said that political uncertainty was their main worry at the moment, whereas the number of people who said they had actually been victims or members of their companies had been victims of crimes had gone down. It had gone down 5% on the previous year, and since 2007 it's gone down by 34%. So that is another indicator, an independent indicator showing that crimes affecting business, certainly organized business, is reducing. It's still high. 50% of the survey sample said that they were still victims of crime in the last year. Most of that's quite petty crime, it's property crime, not really violent crime. But still, it is still a big impact. The good news is that it's now the fourth year in a row that we've seen a positive trend. The political uncertainty's probably got a lot to do with statements made by the Youth League and issues around nationalisation and that kind of thing that haven't found any finalisation or resolution. But it does show a shift in the kinds of issues that are concerning business.
One of the most notable statistics is the decrease in bank robberies, where 561 bank robberies were recorded in 1996-97 and only 39 recorded in 2011. How was this reduction achieved?
Bank robberies are one of the success stories because of good partnerships between the police and the banking sector. The banking sector set up the South African Bank Risk Information Centre a few years ago, and they collect information on the nature of bank robberies, cash in transit heists, a lot of commercial crimes, and so they are able to provide additional analysis and support to the police. The police in turn have also been able to work with this information, increase their intelligence capacity, their ability to predict or to work or investigate these crimes more effectively. And we've seen increasing arrest rates, for instance, of bank robbers and cash in transit heist perpetrators. And so because these crimes, certainly bank robberies and cash in transit heists, are within the criminal underworld seen as only committed by elite criminals, because they usually require a lot of training, a lot of planning, and they have big payoffs. You don't need to do a lot of bank robberies to make a lot of money or cash in transit heists if you plan it properly. And so when you make a few key arrests, when you hit a few core syndicates, you can make big reductions. It's not your ordinary criminal out there with a handgun who's committing these kind of crimes. They usually use automatic weapons. There's some military training sometimes, or security force training. And so it's demonstrated that they managed to get on top of this and made big reductions. Of course, we're seeing the shift now into attacks on ATMs.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for your insight.
Pleasure.
Donate now and give 15 Rand a month. SMS JOIN to 41486.